Howdy. I am Lyndon Baines Johnson, your representative in Congress. Well, actually, I'm not a representative, but I am secretary to Congressman Dick Clayburgh. And you folks here in Austin aren't in our congressional district. But if you ever need anything and your congressman can help you, you write to Lyndon Johnson, and I guarantee that you'll receive a return letter the same day we get yours. So what am I doing here outside the restaurant at the Driscoll Hotel in Austin, Texas in August of 1934? Well, I'm waiting for the girl I'm going to marry. I met her yesterday afternoon. I went to pick up this girl who I had a blind date with last night, and this other pretty girl, Lady Bird Taylor, was there. Well, we all went for drinks, but I set up meeting Lady Bird here this morning. Well, I think here she comes now. Say, Bird, didn't you notice me? Now come on over here. You almost walked right by. You sit down, and now we're going to talk a little bit. There we go. Now, how in the world did you ever get a name like Lady Bird?
Well, from my nurse, Alice Tuttle. She looked at me when I was born and declared I was purty as a lady bird. And well, the name just stuck. My real name is Claudia Alta Taylor.
Now, did you get a good education?
Yes, I did. I went to a junior college for 2 years, an Episcopal school where I converted to the Episcopal faith. But I graduated from University of Texas with honors in history. I stayed an extra year to get a second degree in journalism.
Now, how about your family?
Well, my father, Thomas Jefferson Taylor, he owns a general store in Karnak. That's in East Texas. He calls himself a dealer and everything. My mother died, though, when I was 5 years old. I was raised by my Aunt Effie.
Well, I was born 26 years ago in the hill country, and then I lived in Johnson City. When I was 12 years old, my grandmother died, and my daddy bought the Johnson Ranch. Do you know that my daddy ran 6 times for the Texas legislature, and he never lost once, but he wanted to make his living on the land. I was a wild boy. My grandmother Baines used to tell folks, that boy is going to wind up in a penitentiary. And you know, I must admit, I came a hair's breadth away from going to jail. Well, I broke my dear mother's heart when I didn't want to go to college. So what I did was I went out west to work a bit, but I came home knowing that I needed an education. So I went to a small college for mostly poor folk, San Marcos. Then I took a year off to teach at a poor school down in Cotulla, Texas. The students there all spoke Spanish, but I made it a rule that they couldn't speak it in school, and if they did, I'd spank them. I graduated from San Marcos, and then I taught public speaking at Sam Houston High School, and I turned that debating team into a championship team. Now, these 2 experiences made me realize that it's good education that's the key to success for poor folk. Now, it was while I was still in college that I got my career started in politics in a rather kind of peculiar way. I was at this public gathering, and I stood up and I gave a little speech for a candidate who was running against a man named Willie Hopkins. Well, Hopkins was there, and he was so impressed with my ability that he asked me to be his campaign manager, and he won. It was actually Willie who recommended me to Congressman Dick Clayburgh to be his secretary in Washington. Now, Bird, I make $4,000 a year, and I got some good life insurance. But Mr. Dick, he'd rather have a good time than work for his constituents. So I'm really running that office and doing the work of a congressman. And I fully support President Franklin D. Roosevelt. I believe in his vision for the country, especially for the rural areas. Now, let's go take a long ride.
It was like finding yourself caught up in a whirlwind. I had not met up with that kind of vitality before. Lyndon told me about his past girlfriends, his desire to speak up for the poor, his dreams for the future, and by the end of the day, he really shocked me.
Bird, I want you to be my wife.
Well, I told him that would be ridiculous. But I did invite him to meet my daddy, who told me, you've brought home a lot of boys. This one looks like a man.
So I returned to Washington and started writing letters to Bird. This morning I am ambitious, proud, energetic, and very madly in love with you. I want to see people. I want to walk through throngs, want to do things with a drive, including pursuing my suit of marriage. 2 months later, I showed up at her house. Bird, we either do it now or we never will.
All right.
Yeah!
Well, the wedding was as quick and as wild as the courtship. Our engagement lasted only as long as the car ride from Karnak to San Antonio. Lyndon had phoned a friend there and asked him to arrange the wedding to take place at the Episcopal Church that very night. Then, in the middle of the ceremony, when it came time to place my wedding ring on my finger, we had a problem. Lyndon's friend had forgotten to get it. So he ran over to a Sears Roebuck store and brought back a whole tray. The one I picked out cost $2.50. The next morning I called a friend and I told her, Lyndon and I committed matrimony last night. Well, the wedding took place on November 17th, 1934. Lyndon was 26 years old and I was 21.